Hi, Kai.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Beautiful day in
Yeah.
Portland, and I should probably be outside, but I have a window open, so
Well, thank you so much for allowing this to happen. And this is quite a different interaction that we're gonna have because it's usually what we meet regularly. And I want to ask you, like, who is Kai? Why is Kai playing with? Like, what is he interacting with? It? It's kind of engagement that we have. And I use the word play because from the first things that I remember interacting with you back in the day was an exercise you did. It was very playful. And I really connected to you in such a way. And I feel like our relationship, it is very playful, but at the same time, it has many different levels. So tell us a little bit about who is Kai and what does he like playing with?
it's such an interesting. So yeah, so who am I in the context of what I like playing with? Um, well, one of the things that I'll say, I've been sort of refining lately what it is that I'm up to in the world and the different shapes. It takes different forms, right? But what is that fundamental thing that I'm up to? And it kind of keeps coming back to this thing about helping people connect with themselves and each other. There's something about, this little child in me that just wants everyone to get along. And,
Mhm.
uh, and so I have this impulse to like help people see like how beautiful we each are and help individuals see how beautiful they are. And that's kind of this, the much longer story here. But ever since I had a kind of a life-changing moment about 12 years ago, I really have oriented in that direction, and it shows up in lots of different ways. And then maybe relevant to our conversation here, one of the things that I do is I try to use somatic mindful work, things like Hakomi, IFS, things like that, to help people again find that true beauty within themselves. So all the little bits and pieces of us that come up for you, like all the little Monikas, right, that come up, and then something that's also us that is bigger than that, that is brighter than all of that. So
That's so beautiful. You said the word Hakomi, and I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what it is. Sometimes I have a hard time saying, "Oh, we do Hakomi," and then I go like, "Oh, sky," like because it's too complicated for me. But related to that, I can understand that there's like a lot of things happening when you do Hakomi or when you're a couple of things that I notice. It's like you're a very good listener, so you really listen to all the crap that I bring forth all the time. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's dramatic, but so you have this like, ability to be able to be such a good listener, but also you're very good about observing things. So is that part of the Hakomi method, observation and listening?
yeah, that's a good question. You're right. To say just that I'm a Hakomi practitioner is maybe a little bit limiting because what I will say is that Hakomi is for me the kind of basis upon which a lot of what I do is based. Hakomi is a style of mindful somatic work, and I think there's a lot of beautiful things within it. But I've also done a lot of other trainings and other background as well, and kind of developed some of my own ways of working as we do over time, right? So I feel like it's always worth mentioning because I think it's such a beautiful kind of art form of its own. But there are a lot of other layers there. And so I would say that there's lots of pieces about listening that are essential in many different contexts. With Hakomi, there is in particular practices done to learn how to open into a heart space with someone else. And so kind of listening in a heart space. And there are a lot of practices you do early on when you're learning to become a practitioner to really work with that. And then also, I mean, this kind of goes back to what brought me to this work in the first place, which is that even as a kid, I would be on a bus next to someone, a stranger, an adult,
Yeah.
and they would start sharing all their childhood trauma stories. And by the end of the trip, they were, I remember one time I was on an airplane with someone, and this woman was going to change her life, and she was going back to Chicago, and she was going to quit her job, and and this is just one plane flight of sitting next to me. So something would happen that came from my grandfather to my mother to me. My grandfather was a pastor, and
Oh.
we'd be walking through parks and suddenly we'd be gone and we'd have to look around and where is he? What happened? And then we look and he'd be talking to a person in a suit, a homeless person dragging a bag, any number of different kind of people, but in rapt attention with him in this deep, like they're sharing in this way that they're fully engaged in this beautiful space of like listening and holding that he would create for people. So something of that came through to me. And then I've been on a journey of trying to figure out what to do with that. So I made documentaries for many years.
Mm.
I simply was present for people for many years. And then when I came to this path of doing integral coaching, Hakomi work, all of this type of work, that was the beginning of me saying, can I do this on purpose? Can I do it skillfully? Can I take
Yeah.
this listening and also support people in transformation as well? So, yeah.
So there's a natural component about you being able to, like, as you say, like, you observe your grandfather naturally doing that. So in a way, sometimes we learn. I mean, many times we're conditioned by our ancestors, and so we end up like copying that behavior because we learn or we're taught that this is the right thing to do, or how we're going to succeed in life if we just mimic or mirror their behavior. But it's also, there must be a natural way for, as you say, to want to have people in peace or in harmony, at least, or at least to support them. And at least in my case, I know you support me a lot, so I can find a balance in what I consider very extreme situations. So that brings me back to, we met around more than 3 years ago, but we've been working together with purpose 3 years ago, exactly, I think February 2021, if I'm not wrong. Prior to that, we met in this place, Rebel Wisdom, which I met a lot of people, Mary, Ellery, like many people that right now are part of my life. I met them there, and there was all this great space during the pandemic to practice different kind of therapies, or I don't know, games, I would say, because some of them, like when I enter that workshop that you gave, you just offer that. And I remember this. I remember the exercise was amazing. I had recently had like a fit with somebody in that group, because we're going to talk a little bit about what my problems are relational. So I had really been hurt by something, or someone, or I thought so. And I remember, like, I said, I really want to be part of that workshop. And you made us do this exercise that I still remember, like using the camera of the computer. You made us like go, I think we were in pairs, and or probably three people, but it was a breakout room, and we're in pairs. I'm almost sure about that. And then you make us like become aware of our space and our bodies by like standing up. And I think this is called orienting or something like that, but it was something so interesting, because I had done work all my life. I've been working on myself, but this was the first time I realized that somatic, as in the body, was something that at first, if you do the exercise, you probably even think, oh, that's so dumb. Like, he wants me to like stand up and look at the camera from above. I mean, what is it that I'm going to gain? But there was something that happened in that moment, especially with the person that I was working with. Something just opened up, and I was like, ooh, this is new for me. And that new perspective was something that started happening that year. And then it brought me to where I am right now, which is like, how should I put this? Is like, I don't want to say that I'm fixing myself, because there's nothing wrong with me, but I want to say that I want to discover new ways of relating. And because of that curiosity, because of that, allowing myself to be playful and to try something that even before I was able to judge and say, oh, this is stupid, I would say like, okay, let's play. And because I allow myself to do that without judging myself and without stopping myself, it opened up something that I would have never known hadn't I done that. So I thank you, because that was so beautiful. And that's why I connect to the practice a lot. So I wanted to say, like, I guess that you have that part of yourself that is very playful throughout your life. Is it something that is part of your daily life, your practice? Like it's something, I don't know. I can imagine.
Yeah, well, the playfulness. So it's kind of two things happening there. That exercise. So that exercise, just to keep giving credit where it's due, does come out of that. I mean, it comes out of a number of different places. Certainly, Hakomi as well does these sorts of experiments where you're physically changing things, or you're responding in a different way, and there are all these experiments. They're all playful experiments. It's like, well, what happens if, when we're doing this, we get really mindful. We notice what happens when, say. I think that exercise was about, okay, you're looking at someone, and then they start kind of standing up and slowly looking down at the camera. So now this person is looking down at you. What happens? What changes, right? And then you're looking down at them. What does that feel like? And all this stuff comes up. And it's amazing. I remember there was a great exercise early in my Kami training, and we've done this in other workshops since, where you connect pinkies with another person. So you just kind of hook pinkies together, right? And then one person, so you just kind of first, what comes up? right? Some people, they feel connected and loved. Some people, they feel trapped. All these things are happening just connecting two pinkies. And then you start to separate the pinkies.
Yes.
They're abandoning me. They're setting me free. They're like, right? All these different things come up. So it's amazing how we can use these simple somatic exercises to connect with what's deeply true for us and how we respond to the world. And then
Yeah.
ultimately be able to see those patterns and systems and, for what they are. So I think it's an amazing tool and a whole set of things. So I love that you got so much out of, yes, I saw what was possible from that exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that because throughout that time, I was also really reconnecting to my inner child, because that started happening to me during 2020. So you come in, part of my life is when I'm actually playing with the idea that I can speak to little Monika, and then I discover not only there's one little Monika, but there are many, and they're all like needy, and they're all like going like, "Dude, where have you been?" And one is dressed up like she's 3, the other one is 6. They're all like very whimsical. And so, yeah, so the Monikas are very funny. They're very needy. They're young. They need space and they need attention. So I started discovering them throughout 2020 when the pandemic started. And I realized that I was going to be alone for a while because of, pandemic. We were not allowed to get out. And, New York was like almost impossible to be with people. And although I like to so much to be by myself, just the idea of being imposed to be by myself, I hated it. Now it's like, now I want to be with people, right? So and I couldn't see people for a long time. So I started talking out loud and talking and like, what would you like to have for breakfast? It's like, I don't know. So I started playing these games again, like the playfulness is something that attracts me a lot. And then within it, and I was also, I think, practicing something the year before, a virtue of being kind to myself. And so I discovered that if I would smile when I was alone, that will make me laugh so much, because I will notice that I'm smiling alone and I'm like, what are you doing? And I was like, we're practicing kindness. And yeah, but we're alone. It's like, yeah. And then I will start laughing, noticing that I was observing my behavior. And that started then. So when this exercise happens, there's something that reminds me of like, there must be a way where I can get in touch with my needs that is different from what I've been doing. Because I've been in therapy for a while. And although every step has really helped me to evolve, there's a time that I arrive that I go, okay, thank you, this is great. And then we close the thing. That's the end of that story. Now, to make things even more funny, that day of the exercise, my previous therapist, this Buddhist monk woman from New York, was part of the exercise. I was so impressed that this was like serendipity. I had stopped working with Barbara. We worked together for a while during my divorce. Really love working with her, but there was a moment that like the things that I was working with were done. And I moved out and I said, it's better, because we were working in person. But then there she was. And I was like, Barbara, what are you doing there? So I thought that was very like a good signal, that it was almost like she was giving me like a way. But it took me some time for me to say, hey, Kai, can we work together? And I want to talk a little bit about that condition, because I don't know if you remember. Okay, so I have a lot of, I'm going to rephrase this. So my issue, if there is one, is all relational. So I'm working about boundaries that I didn't have since I was little. I was very open, very compassionate person, and very much didn't have the need to actually say no to things, because it was like, I don't know how to say it. It's like I didn't care. But with time, I have realized that not caring about other people, like being around you, doesn't mean that you have to allow them to step all over you. But I didn't know that, because I grew up with no boundaries. There were no boundaries in my house, emotional. And then I ended up being in a relationship, which I was attracting the same thing. But then there's a moment when I'm maturing, or I'm trying to mature, that I feel this is really what is causing so much pain in my life, because I don't know how to say no. And I want my independence. So I used to get to the point where I was like always crying, screaming for my space, and being very frustrated, and then breaking up relationships and coming back. And I hate this person. This is the moment that I met you. I'm yet hating somebody else because this person I cannot stand. Da, 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 da. So I remember coming to you and I said, because I have trust issues as well, I said, Kai, we're going to try this for 3 times. You remember that?
I do. Yeah.
I like, can you tell me
You said,
how
I
it
don't want any
feels?
contracts. I don't want any agreements.
We're not gonna get married.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that make you feel? Like you immediately understood that there was like something about trust, right? In my
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it was clear that you were being very careful about what you were going to commit to and who, and you wanted to test the waters, put your toe in, see if it was cold, find out if it was somewhere you wanted to, step into. And yeah, so I think we said, okay, let's meet 3 times and then we'll just see what happens
Yes.
after doing that. Yeah.
And I forgot about it. And then the fourth time or the third time you said, do you want to continue? I was like, of course. And it's just like, I remind you. And I was like, oh, it's true. Because I felt really okay with working with you. And I wanted just to make sure that I was not going to create a projection where I create codependency, because that's my biggest issue. Like I'm here to
Right.
really become self reliant, and I know that that's like a very thin line between like doing things for myself and being self-sufficient, but at the same time allowing other things to be done for me. And then I kind of like, that's the story of my life, like just kind of like no boundaries. And then one day I wake up and it's like, how come I have no freedom? Well, I allow this and this and the whole
Mhm.
mountain of things that I allow. So it's been 3 years. So I don't know if you want to just kind of describe a little bit like, what have you seen grown out of me, like as like if I was like an experiment? Like what have you
Or a plant, or
yes,
I
like
have to
an
think of what
object.
the metaphor. Yeah, right. Well, I actually went back and looked through to find some, moments along the journey, and a lot of things have happened over that time period, of course. And I think what was interesting to me is there were some early places where you were starting to feel like you were developing. So it started off, and you had this way that you would talk about something's happening, it's not working, something's breaking trust, or someone is breaking trust. And there was a way of just kind of slamming the door, and they're out,
Mhm.
right? That was the only option, is they are out or they are in. And we started
Yes.
playing around with this space in between, right? What was the sort of the Tai Chi version of boundaries, right? There was something like, oh,
Mhm.
you can stand just over here. I'm not going to throw you completely out, but you can't come over any
Yeah.
closer than that. And let's play with that a little bit, right? And there was,
And-
yeah, exactly, yeah. And you're making hand gestures that we won't see in the audio version. um,
yeah.
and I think we played with that physically as well. We also played with like, what does that feel like to kind of set, uh, playing physically with what it feels like to set a boundary and set a soft versus a hard boundary and what that's like. And I think there were these places along the way early on that you were getting better at some of this. And then sometimes it would, you called it the Doberman would come out, right? Like Doberman would come out. And
Yes.
and there were some places where you were actually starting to get angry and frustrated with the fact that you had made progress, and then suddenly you'd find yourself in a new context, and then suddenly all the skills and everything else were gone, right? And then that would have you
Yeah.
additionally more angry, and then more Doberman would happen. And you're like, okay. So this was kind of that little, forward, backwards process. And I think there's kind of two venues that you were playing in. One is this kind of one-on-one relationships with people, and then also your relationship with groups has been really important
Yes.
through this whole time. And so there's a lot of progress from these early stages of there's a person in a group, I need to leave the group. And then, okay, maybe I can be in the group and find out how to manage being with that person. And then ultimately starting to find, oh, these people are actually gems, right? So this was a big, yeah. And, Carlos Castaneda has this thing where he talks about, I think he calls them little tyrants, these like people in our
Mhm.
lives where they're like, oh, little frustrations, which are beautiful opportunities to practice. Because
Yeah.
what is about that particular person that's bringing this thing up in us? And now that thing is up in us. So we get a chance to play with it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before it would just kind of come up and take over. And now it's like, oh, this person's around. I can keep coming to them, fire up this little thing in me, and then work with that thing in me. And so there have been a couple of these people along the way. And there've also been groups that have helped create this experience.
Mhm.
And so been this real journey for you around progressively finding your way to more and more kind of skillful, nuanced ways of interacting with both. I think that's a big piece of the whole journey. And ultimately now finding groups where you feel like things still come up, but you manage them, you make adjustments, you're playing, right? And staying longer each time. Each time there's more room to like, okay, I can find a space for myself here to play. Yeah. Does that sound
Yeah,
like that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is true. And I think, when I first came, I had a problem. I was, okay, so pandemic came, I was alone. I decided, okay, I'm going to practice. I felt it was convenient and also safe that we were meeting in Zoom. So that made
Mhm.
the space that I'm going to open up, it's regulated by me. I'm one step of like closing the computer and I'm gone.
Right.
Like I don't have to
Yeah.
say you got to leave or
Mhm.
I have
Yeah.
to go or or just rush out the door and things that this was what was happening sometimes when I was in situations that I didn't know how to deal with. So like one of the first things that I learned way before, just before I got divorced, like I didn't know that if there was a situation that I couldn't stand during a relationship with people or with one person, like with one person or groups, where I started feeling not safe and like I will start breathing faster and not feel safe. I didn't know I could actually stand up and leave. Can you imagine that? I had no idea that there
Mhm.
was an
Yeah.
option. So when I learned that there was an option, I was like, whoa, I'm going to use this. But then obviously I went the other way and I was like, eject adult times. Like I wouldn't,
Mhm.
like I would be in a situation that it was slightly uncomfortable and I'll go, boom, parachute, boom. And so
Mm.
it was like, okay, there must be something in between because I was going from not knowing what to do and actually kind of staying silent, but eating everything inside of me was like horrible. And I will feel like
Mhm.
I'm absorbing everything. I don't want to be here. I hate this situation. I don't even know. But if I stand up and leave, they're going to be upset. I'm like a lot of stuff. There was a
Mm.
lot of stories. And so it's interesting because I also want to talk a little bit about the difference when you make so many stories in your head, the disconnection that happens with the body is intense
Mm.
because then I in my case I started feeling very guilty about those feelings, like I don't like this person or I don't want to be here or that person is blah. And I started making the stories about this person and then more like why I'm relating to this and because I didn't know that there was another way to actually tend to what I was feeling, I would like go over and over with this thing. And so I will get that hatred for that person or situation like forever. I would like cling to
Mhm.
that as much as I
Mhm.
hated it, instead of like allowing it to happen and understand what is this thing or this gem telling me or the
Mhm.
opportunity. I would push it so much away. And that has a lot to do with Tai Chi as well. I would just push it. So instead of like releasing the energy, I was getting more of it. And I just had no idea how to do that. And even though I have done with different kind of practitioners and different kind of things, it was just like arriving to the level of being able to know in parentheses that I could control the Zoom meeting. That gave me a
Mhm.
lot of comfort because that relieved like many layers of like when you relate to people, that part of like coming in, saying hello, giving kisses, like being touchy, and then leaving and all that stuff. It's not there. You go to the meeting, sometimes you put the camera, sometimes no, it's like you have more control. So there was a amount of control that gave me safety. Now, for instance, that I'm going into the real world, I don't have the control anymore. So the only thing that I can do is just really be in my body and acknowledge that if there's something that is uncomfortable, I will look at it and say, "Ooh, this is uncomfortable." And if I have a way out of it, I obviously not going to stay in a place where I feel uncomfortable. If I have to cut a conversation, I will say, "Hey, this is making me a little bit uncomfortable. Do you mind if I just leave?" And then we'll catch back. But I don't push it to say, "You piece of something, I
Mhm.
hate you," and all that, because
Yeah.
that was like those were my tools before because
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have any kindness. I could be. I think somebody once said that I had like a metal tongue because I could be
Mm.
very, very yeah, insulting because all I was doing was trying to protect myself and I didn't know how
Right.
to. So I arrived
Yeah.
to a place where the buildup was so much that by the time I have to say something, I was in so much pain and I just wanted
Yeah.
to get out. So I would just go and pick up like the the thing that I know is gonna hurt you the most. I will pick it up and go, this is going to be stellar. I'm just gonna say it. And then boom. And that would create so much disruption sometimes to the other, but mostly inside of myself. was horrible because I was already feeling bad, but then after this, I was feeling terrible, and then guilt, and being with guilt. So I really appreciate a lot of the work I've been doing, also because it's almost like, I don't know how to say, like, you're not telling me, oh, this is guilt. Like, we're not talking on those terms. We just speak so different. Like, like I meet with you and I tell you stories. I'm a storyteller, blah, 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 blah. And then you stop me sometimes and you remind me of things. So I want you to tell me a little bit, like, how is that for you? Like, you're seeing somebody like me that I speak like so much, so fast. Sometimes you have to stop. It's like, wait, because I'm like here and then there, like the speed.
Yeah, well, I can talk a little about working with people who talk, because I am one, and so I've learned a
Yeah.
lot in working with
Yeah.
myself. But I don't want to miss this other opportunity too before we move on, because I think it's such an important thing. I mean, for anyone, but it was something that came up for you. Talking about these people that were challenging, these little gems, these little opportunities, and maybe saying a little bit about what was it like. And there's a number of people, so you can think of anyone. We don't have to talk about a specific person, but what was it like to start to say, okay, what if I stay engaged? So I don't use the little, find the little thing that will hurt them the most to send them away or slam the door. And instead you started letting people you didn't let them close because they were still very upsetting, but you stayed engaged with them. And things started to shift, and beautiful moments started to happen of actual connection with these terrifying, horrible people. So maybe say a little bit about that as that part of your journey.
Yeah. It's interesting because I started probably trusting myself more and in the relationship, as opposed to seeing this person or persons as enemies, or they're doing something to me. So there was like a shift between, like, if I want to be able to transform that feeling, and I stay from in a position of victimization, like, this is happening to me, this person is always doing this to me, I have no power, and I will always see them as the evil, whatever, bad person, and I want to smash their glasses, or I want to like kick their ass, because that's what I wanted to do. I was back being 4 years old and just like smashing everything. So I realized that I wanted to get out a little bit of that like situation, that it was very physical, but at the same time very emotional. So there was no space, because it was the emotion, the one that wanted to like push or slap, or there was always like there was anger. Like the emotion that I feel most is anger, because I'm very fiery and I want to do it. So I feel like always like anger wants to push or create, ignite, and something like that. So I always want to burn the village, or, like, like the dragon. I have that figure. Like, I want to go and just like, wow, destroy everything. So I realized that I had the opportunity not to destroy, but to be creative. So how am I going to take that energy and actually transform that energy from fire to something that maybe I can use a little bit to heat something, but I don't have to like burn the whole village, because that's what I wanted to do. So I started seeing the person or the situation not as the enemy. I think that was the big shift. And I was saying, maybe what's happening is that surface that I'm projecting is actually a mirror that is allowing me to see the things in me that I have to integrate. And that's when I started really understanding shadow work from Carl Jung. And I was like, oh, this is so amazing, because it's neither or. What I was interested in was to see if there was a sort of dialogue that I could have, inner dialogue with myself, and what it was happening, or I thought it was happening, because sometimes there's like, I'm thinking that this is happening, or I'm perceiving it like that, but actually not really, because I'm triggered about something else. So I was giving myself a lot of time and space, and the wave of emotion was not that fast. It was happening, I was allowing it to happen, but then I will come back and look at it at the same perspective, but different time. And I will say, oh, maybe this person didn't say this thing like that. I heard it like that. And I felt, minus, or I'm plus, whatever. But it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the way I'm relating to it. So I started really being more connected with the idea of what was emerging. And what was emerging was what it was giving me the attention to shift. Because when I stay with a person and I create a monster out of the person, and I could within 3 minutes, this person is evil. And I came like that at the very beginning with certain specific people, and still like come back and I come to you and go like, and this new person, so I'm always creating these characters. But then within a while, I go like, oh, but guess what? This character in this new movie is actually giving me this. So I started like seeing that every character that is there is actually a mirror or a surface that I can actually see what is it that I'm projecting, what is it that I'm missing, what is it that I'm not integrating. Because my purpose is to be able to integrate with what is emerging, because that's the gift, that's the gem actually. So I think that that's something that happened. First, I saw it when one person we both know from a group, and I think I had like this person is actually not that annoying. It annoys me because I have not integrated that thing. And I think you said something very interesting about something, and I can be very open about it. One of the things that I'm integrating is like when people ask me for things from a place of victimhood or what I feel is victimhood. I'm going to say something that's horrible, but it's true. I have to admit it. I feel like I want to kick their ass and not help them. I don't have compassion. But you said one day, I don't want to paraphrase you, but you said something like, maybe I'm not allowing to be vulnerable with myself in those moments where I'm actually the one who's feeling like a victim or feeling less. So I think that that's something made me shift in there. It's like, oh my God, I'm just pushing this person so much away because I consider them, I judge them to be minus because they're showing that part of themselves, but actually I don't allow myself to feel like that. And I think that that created a lot of a shift. Would that be something? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful example of one of the types of things that comes up in this sort of work. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I was just going to say, and I think like, I don't know, maybe it gets into too many specifics, but I just, there was a moment with a particular person early on when it went beyond just, oh, I can learn something. Oh, okay, I can see in the mirror of them the thing that I'm not allowing, and I do that, to a moment where you were caretaking for them. You were offering opportunities for them. You were supporting them, in fact, which is exactly the opposite of this, right? This feeling of they're a victim, they're asking something, I can't give them anything, to a place of you accepting that there was something that they were wanting and needing and you could provide it, and then finding this
Yeah.
place of providing. And it just was
Yeah.
such a beautiful moment of, yeah, all of that coming together. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I think that if I go back, I mean, I don't want to do it like the way normal psychologists do it, but I always been very much caretaking. Like there's something natural in me that I can take care of people, especially with resources. Like somebody says, "Oh, I'm reading about this. Oh, I have this book," or "I have like it's just natural for me to be very much like that." Now, somehow I attracted a lot of people that they were like, "Ooh, freebies, Monika," and they kind of parked their car in my own platform. And then after a while, I start resenting. It's like, what do you mean? Like you're calling me anytime and I can be there for you. But then I noticed that this is the way I used to say things to people when I was establishing a relationship. I would say, hey, Kai, blah, blah, blah. We would like go on talking about each other. I said, anytime you need anything, let me know. When I say this to somebody, basically I'm saying, I'm your doormat. I'm not giving any boundaries. But this is natural in me. I learned that from my house. Like my mom, she was always like very giving and stuff like that. But then she would resent very much when people were crossing boundaries. Obviously, she didn't know how to do that. But I've been learning that I cannot set myself up for that. I'm trying to learn right now how much of it is true that I can offer this. But what I'm looking for right now in my new relation and the way I relate to people is this other person having a real relationship with their needs? Is this person accountable or just wants to be with me so I can get this person all the freebies? That kind of relationship I'm not going to have because I don't want to be a hanger. I don't want to have people creating codependencies with me because I allow that early on and I was codependent on other people's situations. So I think that what's happening is like I can see exactly where the relationship could go, like fast forward, and I can see both my behavior and the behavior of the other person, like through a tunnel, and I go, oh, I have to say no. I have to say this. And I know it takes so much strength for me to actually say the no at the beginning, because basically they're going to hate me. I know it. There's going to be a moment that is like, I can totally feel them because I'm super perceptive, going like, fuck Monika, like she's such a bitch. And I'm deep inside, I go like, I know. But I'm doing this for me, not even for them. I'm doing this for me. And that's what I've seen, because some people have come back and they've given me thanks for that. They said, thank you for being there. Thank you for, and I'm learning how to still be me. And if I still see something that I don't like or something, I just say, I call it immediately. I was like, you know what? That's not going to happen. We're not going to do this. And I don't wait for it. And this is, I think, a big improvement, because I don't wait for it. I just say it. Now I've been learning how to say these things, because that's another level. You cannot just go and push people, and people go like, why are you pushing me? It's like, I'm taking care of my boundaries. No, it's like, you have to learn how to do that. So yeah, that's interesting. It's a whole art.
Yeah. And there's a progression to all of this. Yes. Well, and you're talking about that progression, right? Of like refinement. And that's why, you've said it a couple of times about talking about how, it's not helpful to see ourselves as kind of broken or needing work or whatever it might be, because there's something beautiful about that expression at every point. The point where you were generous and offering people things, right? What a beautiful thing. But also it had challenges, right? So it's a beautiful thing to give, and too much giving becomes a problem, right? And so then there's, okay, now I learned to slam the door. It's like, what a beautiful thing. A person who can express their firm boundary, right? But then there's another new challenge, which is like, okay, well, how do people get in, or how do you connect? And so then there's progression of these little refinements. And so now you're talking about these nuances, right? You're talking about like, well, now there's this nuance of I'm creating the boundaries ahead of time. I'm noticing in the moments, I'm naming them. I need to name them in a way that's just that right amount, that sets something clearly, but also gives them some space as well. And so what a level of nuance, right? To be working at in this progression we're talking about over just a couple of years. To arrive at such a place of nuance. Yeah.
And also, like, I noticed, for instance, I get lost in big groups. So it's not that I try to avoid them, but I understand like what happens with me. So it's uncomfortable. So when I go to conference and stuff like that, I become very aware of the space that I have around me and the space that I'm giving to myself in relationship to the space where I'm going to get lost. Or in a new relationship with a friend, when they start like, I like you, and I go like, whoa, slow down. Like I want to take time to like let the relationship grow to whatever it's supposed to be, and I want to take the time, because that time is what I never gave myself. So I claim that time and that space tremendously when I meet people. I don't have a how to say, like a piece of paper saying dangerous dog here, but I do say a couple of things. I call it, I read my Bill of Rights. I said, hey, you're going to come and live close to me, or we're going to have this facilitation, and you're my student or whatever. So this is the way I do it. So I actually establish very clear intentions about what I want to do. And this has really helped me a lot, because I'm not caring that much about what they're going to think. Oh, another weirdo. I'm just another weirdo. I don't care. Because what it's giving me in return is the safety that I can actually, because I stated my needs, then we can start from there. Now, you can always say, no, you're crazy, I don't want to deal with you. And I go, all right, see you later, or never. It's fine with me. And I find that's very powerful for me right now. Now, my aim will be that one day I don't have to state my Bill of Rights, and it's like something that becomes natural as other things have become more natural with time. Because I was doing this gesture with the hands before. I remembered that was one of the first things we did in a session, is that you said to me, or you show me that instead of me having the two hands pushing away, that's what I was doing always, like building a wall. It's like, how would it feel if you have one still holding the space, like, alert, and the one on my heart? So I'm one taking care of myself in the other one. And I think I did this for a long time. I will like immediately think like, ooh, injure. And then ask myself, are you okay? Yeah, we're good. Okay. Everybody okay? Yeah, okay. So we can move forward. So I started becoming more aware of all the needs that we have, and then be able to relate with the rest of the world in accordance to my needs. And that, I think, has been probably the most powerful thing I've done. That's why I wanted to write a book. And I wanted to say about the book, oh, you kind of inspired a couple of things there, because still when I was part of those groups, Emerging Commons and stuff like that, you came up with this idea about the storytelling.
Oh, the storytelling experiment. Yes. Kevin Triplett
Yeah.
was the other person.
Kevin,
the two of us put that together. Yeah.
Yeah. So you put that one, and that was interesting because I was like, okay, we're going to play this game where we're all going to write a story, and I'm going to try to play with all these people. Half of the people in the story I don't like, because I had always issues with them. The other ones are okay. And then there was all this order, whatever. So I was like, it's interesting because your playfulness in many things has always invited me to do something that it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But that I was like, okay, so I always been a writer, but this gave me this idea of like, how would it be like to start organizing my ideas and maybe putting them out there without thinking too much about it and being able to express. So that was like something was happening. Obviously, I didn't continue with the experiment. I don't remember exactly what happened. I think that with groups after, I was like, I don't want to play anymore, and I leave. That's what happens. But even since I was little, like, boring game, bye. And then I go, because I like, and the other.
And you contributed quite a bit to that storytelling experiment. You stuck it out for quite a while. I can't remember if you were there all the way to the end or not. Maybe I think you didn't do the second one. We did a second experiment, but you were very much part of the first one. So
yeah. Yes, I was. And I was like, okay, don't judge. Just be game, like play a game. You said, and so I was okay. So I was like really noticing how it makes me feel, and what parts of this game annoy me. So I was always looking for those things, because those triggers are what made me realize that at the very end, it's like whatever I'm putting in front of me is the surface that I want to project something to see or to hear myself, as opposed to go like, I don't like this thing that Kevin wrote, or Kai, or whoever was in the story. So don't take it personally, just like let it go with the flow. So yeah, I did the first one, but then by the second one, I was like, whatever, I don't want to play this game. And then so I get distracted. And then the other one was also very good. I remember that one I had also a conflict with somebody. Hello. It was accountability one. I actually had, so that was interesting because, and this is something that I'm just going to disclose here, because I think that the next step that I want to work with you in the next month, that I realized this week, is that I'm still very afraid of intimacy. I'm very afraid of establishing very close relationships. Like I'm going to admit, it's like I've been thinking about it and I go like, it's better not to. But then I realized that better not to is coming from fear. It's really coming from fear. So I'm speaking about intimacy at all levels, like with friends, and more like probably eventually having somebody else to share my life with. Not yet. Don't worry. Don't feel like it. Still have issues, because I'm kind of enjoying that space that I'm creating for myself. So even creating something, for instance, as that exercise of accountability was creating some sort of intimacy, because we were supposed to choose somebody else that we were supposed to connect to and be accountable. So I noticed when I was reflecting on that things happen when you get an accountability partner. It's like almost you start behaving, in my case, like all the things that happen in a relationship when you're more intimate. Like, I don't like the way you brush your teeth. You said you were going to call me, you didn't, and stuff like that. And so I started going like, I don't like this game, because it's like, it's too close and too uncomfortable for me. But I allow myself to experience that. And I said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to have an accountability partner. I actually don't need one, because I basically am so disciplined that I am my own accountability person. Self-sufficiency here, but some people do, and I appreciate that some people do. Yeah. Well,
I'm noticing time, and I want to make sure I say something here, because I think this conversation is primarily about how far you've come and what your journey has been about, right? And sharing some of that.
Yes.
And so I want to point out something really significant, though, which is, and I'll take one person that we can talk about, where you allowed yourself to trust, and you started to collaborate, and you started to experience the that intimacy, that collaboration intimacy, which is its own quality, right? Like being in a band with people is like being in a family, and this kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And so you and Mari have found a way to work
Yes.
together and creating this book, right? Which is part of what this is all
Yeah.
about. And so I feel like that, as you're saying, well, going forward, you want to work on something. I also want to reflect back that she's not the only one. Thomas is another one. There are these people who you've allowed yourself to trust
Yeah.
enough to make the connection, which then led to this flourishing of creative energy. So maybe say a little bit about something about that too, because I feel like that's significant.
It's true. It's true. Thomas, he's gonna laugh when I say this. Because I also gave him the bill of rights from the beginning. It's like, what are we gonna do? What is gonna happen? I don't like this. I like this, and then laughing. And now, after working together, and it's a beautiful relationship because we're just very focused on what we're doing and how much we're growing independently. But it's a relationship that it goes beyond like definition, because it's not a partnership of like legally. We're not like, we just like love to connect and learn many things that are we like reading financial charts or learning about mysticism or whatever is happening. And he's such a good listener as well, and I love to listen to him. And it's just beautiful because it was nothing was expected from this relationship, but I came into it like, oh, not trusting, not because of him, but not trusting the other, like, what do you want? Or if you do this, this is the way I'm going to behave. So we laugh about it right now. Mari was also beautiful. I was not so preventive of that at the very beginning, because I don't know, it was just okay, I know what the difference is like when there's money involved, there's clarity for me.
Mm.
If I pay you, because it's what it is. And so with Mari, and I think we spoke about this on the voices that we did, I said I wanted to pay her from the very beginning because I want that clarity. I like I pay you, like, and for me that's like already defining some things. So I don't have a problem with her. But what happened was that I allow her to go and really dive into some things that were so intimate for me, like my writings. And I even asked her, she said, oh, maybe you should write a book and, we'll buy it. And I said, well, you do it. And then she came back and she goes, I have an idea. And I said, which one? And I said, it's excellent. Do it. So she came with the idea of like, why don't we talk about my individuation process? And it's pretty much what we're talking about, because this is a way for me to become free. And what is it that I'm coming, I'm being freeing myself from a lot of addictive behavior, codependencies, trauma that I had since I was little. And I'm freeing myself to be exactly the person that I always wanted to be, emotionally mature. And not only I'm doing that, but I really feel, because I can tell you right now that I'm serving as an example for many people. Because they've been telling me in the last few weeks or months, they say, wow, can you do that? Like, where do you learn to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's beautiful because I know it works for me. And I know that this is something that people, if they really allow themselves to connect to their inner needs and they ask for support, because I'm telling people, you can't not read that book. Because people, oh, give me the name of the book. And it's like, good luck. This is work. This is like going to the gym. Imagine like getting pumped just by reading a book or watching a YouTube. That's not going to happen. You got to do the work. There's proof of work here. So yeah, I think that I have allowed to trust. Basically, it's not that I'm trusting Thomas, Mari, or you. I'm trusting myself. That's the most important thing. Yeah. I'm trusting myself in the way I relate to people right now. But in that trusting, I have to make sure still that I'm entering any relationship in a very mindful way, because I don't want to just, wake up and say, we've been married 10 years. What happened here? Because literally that's what happened to me.
Right. Yes.
I entered relationships like that. So yeah. So, well, this is great. I don't know if you want to add anything else about my progress. Did I pass the exam?
We didn't talk about exams.
No, I know.
There's a special hat that you get if you achieve a certain level. No, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about. So I think, hopefully we touched on the key things. if there's more, we could always have another conversation. I know this is part of your process around your writing and everything too. So
Yeah.
I have a whole list of little moments and things we could bring in. But I think we touched about some of the key things. And I think it's really, I'm glad we had a chance for you to express what it feels like for you and what it's felt like for you kind of entering into this new thing. And especially that last piece where you're starting to see people reflect back to you. Oh, I see what you do. And it allows me to feel a sense of possibility, right? Like being a mentor
Yes.
simply by being, which is actually what was a big moment partway through your journey of starting to recognize, oh, I can be a role model. The more
Yeah.
I gain skills and learn how to relate and other things like this, people can just simply learn by observing that happen. And now you're getting a lot of feedback
Yeah.
about that, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. And I think the book is going to, I'm already feeling a very big shift in the sense of how I'm going to relate to different things. So I really needed to write it. I'm doing it for me, basically. Obviously, some other people can peek and read it,
Don't tell anyone.
but
Don't tell the publisher.
don't, we need to sell all those numbers, you know. No, but no, but it was an exercise, and it's been an exercise for me to recognize the space that I'm giving to myself to grow and to experience things in a different way. I think that that's something else that I always say when I say that I work with Kai. Like, you're famous when I work with Kai. Who's Kai? Oh, Kai. in a sense that I'm growing more mature because I understand what is it that I need, but I'm not afraid of coming and opening up. I don't feel like every person that you coach or you has the same capacity. Maybe some people you have to like fish the words. I guess that you have different kind of people. With me, you
It's
was like,
different with
slow
everyone.
down.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't get to that. I did. You did ask that question about the fast talking. We only have 2 minutes left, so I'm not going to be able to get into it
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Okay. I won't even open that can of worms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Monika speaks too fast, but it's okay. Well, thank you so much. And I think it's wonderful. I wanted to share a little bit of this because I feel like, and I'm speaking with everybody that listens to this, is there's so much value in giving yourself the space to work with somebody that knows how to like guide you, because there's a guidance. It's almost silent, but it is there, and it's such a privilege to be able to do Hakomi method with you, Kai, because you're gifted in many ways, and I like your playfulness, and it is always so much. I laugh a lot, and I make you laugh a lot during our.
Yes.
so I hope that you're enjoying
Yeah.
it as much as I do, because not
Of
only is
course.
fun, but it's been life changing. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.